Hello, everybody from snowy London. Very cold night here. We are here with the Cosmic Intelligence Agency to talk about 2023. Joining me on this panel today is Victor Olliver from the UK, Liz Hathway from the Netherlands, Jonassen from Norway, Julian Venables from the UK, and me, Alex Trenoweth from the UK as well. So first up is our good friend, Victor Olliver, new agent, 57. He'll be talking about Draconic Astrology and his view on 2023. Welcome, Victor, to your first mission. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. So, shall I share the screen? I'll just put it into slide mode. You see that? Can you see that?
All good, Victor. Looks great.
Okay, so I'll start, shall I?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Would you like me to say a little bit more about you? You're the editor of the Astrological Journal of Great Britain. You've written a brilliant book, Chasing the Dragons, about Draconic Astrology, and you also got a new one out on the secrets of astrology. So really keen to hear what you have to say about 2023.
Yes, I'll start then. I've not timed this, so I'm going to go strictly to 15 minutes max, if that's okay. So looking at some of you listening in won't be familiar with Draconic Astrology, and this is not the place to introduce it. You'll be able to follow the logic of the charts, though it's not so dissimilar from tropical astrology. I'll be showing some charts in a moment, looking at some of the major ingresses and the themes. Even though I've set the charts for London, forget about the houses. But the thing to know about Draconic Astrology is that it's basically a moon-based zodiac. It's a moon-based chart that you create by shifting the North Node in the natal or event chart to 0 degrees Aries. And then you create a new chart by shifting the rest of the planets by the same number of degrees between the natal North Node and 0 degrees Aries. So that's it in essence, explained in 30 seconds. And if you want to know more about Draconic Astrology, there I go, promoting myself already. There's my book. I won't waste my time talking about the other book for now, but that's the introduction to Draconic. It's a very straightforward system. The first major ingress is Jupiter in Aries. Of course, we know that it started on the 10th of May 2022, and it will re-enter Aries on the 20th of December 2022. It's going to be there just till May. But there are some interesting themes arising, and what I'm going to do in this chart is just to touch upon certain themes and maybe encourage you to set up your own charts to see where these particular planets and aspects relate to your particular chart or to your own national chart. But this one's been set up for London. What's the striking thing to me, and the thing to know, interestingly, is that any tropical planet that begins in Aries becomes automatically conjunct to the Draconic North Node. And you can see I've done the highlights there in my squiggly pen. I'm never going to become an architect, clearly, unless you're into surreal architecture. But interestingly, the tropical Jupiter, which initiates this particular ingress, will be opposing Ceres at 0 degrees Libra, which will be sitting on the Draconic South Node. And there are a number of themes here. The thing about Ceres, if you're not familiar with its symbolism, it has to do with agriculture, with nurturing, management, particularly of the environment. There are lots of other themes besides. It's an evolving celestial. And I would suggest that the Jupiter in Aries theme has a lot to do with the environment, with sustainability. That's my interpretation. As I've written here, the Jupiter Aries ingress, Jupiter opposite Ceres conjunct Draconic South Node, is probably about resources and the need to quickly advance sustainability and environmental initiatives. And because Ceres is sitting on the Draconic South Node, that suggests a struggle between the old and the new, the new bit obviously featuring Jupiter in Aries, and the old for our purposes being the association of the South Node. If you're particular about the UK chart, the interesting thing is that it does sit along the cadent houses, which is not the best place for it. I think there is a struggle between the old and the new. Of course, because it's a short transit, I would actually describe Jupiter in Aries as a sort of jumpstart type transit for other themes that are raised in the other ingresses that we'll be looking at. But ever since May 2022, there has been increased military aggression, obviously preceding slightly with the Ukrainian situation, which started in February. It's been a huge, throughout spring, summer, autumn, big issues about fires and droughts and one thing and another. In other words, imbalances. So I think that the Jupiter in Aries ingress is a marker in the skies for an advancement on the sustainability issues. And there may be other reasons why that is the case, event-wise. The other major, well, the big one really is the starter of Pluto in Aquarius, which happens on the 23rd of March, 2023. Bear in mind that Pluto will only be in Aquarius for a few weeks before it returns to Capricorn, and then it will go back into Aquarius in January 2024. But I thought I'd have a look at the chart for the moment. This is like a birth chart, and what you're looking at. The inner wheel is the British chart, but you don't need to worry about that. You could be in Australia, you could be in France, you could be in the Netherlands. It doesn't really matter, because you'll be able to relate the aspects and positions to your particular chart. The next one along are the tropical transits, and the outer wheel represents the draconic transits. The draconic transits, generally speaking, move a lot quicker than the tropical. For example, Pluto is not going to spend more than 18.5 months in a sign, whereas, of course, Pluto tropically can stay in a sign for more than 20 years. And when it finally goes into Aquarius, it will be there for about 20 years. Now, the striking thing, if you look over to the western side of the chart, or the right-hand side, you can see that as Pluto goes into Aquarius, a lot of planets are actually in select points, are in Aries, a cardinal point. But even more interestingly, Uranus, draconically, is conjunct that stellium, more or less. It should be, I should point out that draconic astrology adds a purpose to the chart, or it's like punctuation. It adds a nuance, it adds meaning. And so what I'm thinking about Pluto and Aquarius is that we are going to see enormous advancements in science and so forth, but also with Aries, there's the risk of militarization, the risk of saber rattling. But another thing I want to point out is that it reminds me a bit of the coronavirus chart, which I'm just going to show you, and then I'm going to come back to this chart, but I just want to demonstrate something to you. This is the coronavirus chart for the 31st of December 2019, and as you can see, many of you will remember that massive stellium in Capricorn, which in itself is a sign of lockdown and isolation. And I remember saying to a friend at the time, where's Uranus in all this? And because Uranus is not really, I mean, it's in a trine to Mercury, and really, I don't know, that doesn't really tell me something about the nature of the coronavirus. It was that suddenness, it was the thunderbolt, the awakening, and also the possible science theme. And as you can see, draconically, just pointing with a cursor here, you can see draconic Uranus actually linking to this mass stellium in Capricorn in the 12th house. This is for you. Now, if we go back to the Pluto and Aquarius chart, we have a similar thing going on, and not all the same celestials, but a lot of cardinal energy. And I really do think that the Pluto and Aquarius ingress is going to be marked by quite dramatic changes of direction, because Aries is the first sign in the zodiac. It's bold, it breaks molds, it starts off. I do think there's a strong science element to this because of Uranus, but it's almost as if the pace of life increases. I'm getting that as a very strong energy. But I also see on the positive side very dramatic science innovations. I think that and we'll see this more in 2024 and beyond, and we see it already. Remember, with ingresses, the events don't just happen on the day of the ingress. There's a building up to it, like with the coronavirus. It may have been building up a year before the WHO actually recognized it. We don't know, but there were reports of coronavirus cases back in the summer of 2019. But also remember, Pluto is the planet of the micro. It gets beneath the surface of things. And also that's very relevant to artificial intelligence. So we know about these themes already, but what we're going to see is a massive acceleration, almost Damascene type inventions, which change our direction. And I see this as a very dynamic time, but also a very dangerous time because of the concentration of Aries. There's a greater risk of confrontation. Am I missing anything else here? We've also got Draconic North Node opposite tropical Ceres. So there's actually a similar theme going on to the Jupiter Aries ingress. That's like bubbling under. And let's move on. That's the coronavirus. The other major ingress is Saturn in Pisces, which happens also in March of 2023. March is going to be quite a busy month. It's interesting about Saturn. Saturn is antithetical to Pisces. Saturn is all about shape and solidity. Pisces likes to stretch boundaries, doesn't it? It's into blurring and that sort of stuff. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And when you're looking at this chart, you'll be seeing lots of different things. And you're saying, well, why is Victor not talking about that? The aspect that really interests me is over here in the, for our purposes, the 8th house, but it could be anywhere depending on the natal chart. But we've got this very interesting conjunction of Draconic Jupiter on tropical Mercury in it's almost exact, well, certainly exact by degree, in Pisces. And my interpretation, I mean, some of you will have your own interpretations for that, but because both Jupiter and Mercury are communication planets, also to do with knowledge of one sort or another, and to some extent the sharing of information, I'm wondering whether that relates to the fake news theme, which of course has been with us for a long time. But I'm wondering whether the Saturn in Pisces transit, which will continue, it's quite a long one, going up to February 2026. It will dip into Aries very briefly before going back into Pisces and stay there, till February 2026. And I'm wondering, with Saturn going into Pisces there, as you can see, whether nations are going to take statutory or executive control of the situation in order to try to control the plethora of information and news, which could be real or could be fake. There's a question to be asked. But if you talk about fake news, I think Jupiter on Mercury, in many ways, is the typical aspect for it, because you've got all this knowledge, but you're not quite sure what it is. So I think Saturn's entry into Pisces is very relevant. Now, I'm coming towards this, I'm going to talk more quickly. Some people have asked me about Donald Trump. You know, we know that he's going to stand for re-election and all that stuff. I mean, what I've done here is slightly unconventional. I'm treating the Pluto and Aquarius ingress now as a birth chart for that moment. What's happening in Donald Trump's chart when Pluto goes into Aquarius? And all I can say to you is that it doesn't look great for him. We've got, first of all, his natal Mars conjunct Draconic Ceres. Now, because it's Leo and in his 12th house, I'm thinking that's to do with his health, because Ceres is also to do with health. Also, interestingly, the natal Mars is square Draconic Mars right at the top of the chart, which suggests contention and fights oversensitivity, that sort of thing. I mean, you could say to me, well, we know this already, but it's interesting to see it demonstrated in the chart. Another interesting thing over here in the 8th house is that we have Draconic Venus in Aries conjunct tropical Sun, which is linked to his birth chart by an applying opposition to his Neptune down in Libra. Now, some people say, oh, that's nice. Well, Venus in Aries is not nice. Venus is in its detriment in Aries, and in the traditional sense, Venus in Aries can suggest somebody who's isolated or is needing to hide things about themselves. It's almost as if the need to share is compromised in Aries in some way. And that's affecting, therefore, the tropical Sun. It's bringing that nuance, that punctuation. And of course, opposed by Neptune, we have the whole question of what is truth and all that stuff. And almost as if to relate to it, the Ceres Mars conjunction is in conjunct Saturn, which is not good for the pursuit of executive power. And we also interestingly have Moon conjunct, Draconic Moon conjunct his tropical Neptune, which is actually sextile the Draconic Mars, which sounds positive, but in conjunct the Mars Ceres. So although, I mean, it's like in all charts, you find some positives, but I think the overall message for Donald Trump is not great. I did his solar return in 2020 before he lost the election. And all of the Aries at that time was in his 10th and 11th, which told me draconically that he was starting out on a new pathway. And it was, if you're looking for the same thing, re-election, you don't look for Aries. I'm sorry about the sizing about this. I'm just going to have to make it up as I go along a bit here. This is Joe Biden's chart. So you're looking at both Joe Biden's birth chart. The outer are the transits for Saturn in Pisces. This is Saturn and Pisces. What I would say to you overall is that of course, the transit's going on till 2026, and I can't say to you that this chart is saying that he's definitely standing down next year, but this seems to be an evolving theme in his charts, and I've looked at other charts for him, that there are things, for example, we've got Draconic Uranus on his midheaven, which is could be interpreted as a change of direction of some sort, or a change of life direction. It could be interpreted that way. The other thing that I'm not so sure about is that we see that the tropical moon is on his midheaven, which again is an unstable, the moon is a changing celestial. You don't necessarily want to have it. I mean, some people say that in the mundane chart, it's the people, but I think in another sense, think about the nature of the moon as a changeable celestial sitting on his midheaven and in conjunct Neptune. This chart feels like sort of loss or coming to terms with decline of some sort. But that doesn't mean he won't win the next election. I'm not actually addressing that question for the purpose of this chart. I'm just looking at the overall condition of this chart. I mean, some people will say, well, what about tropical Mars on his draconic ascendant in Gemini? There's some dynamism there. But the overall feel of this chart is not greatly positive. Finally, sorry, I skipped Vladimir Putin. Now, this is for the Pluto and Aquarius ingress, and it really tells us what we know. Now, the interesting thing about this chart is, I mean, a lot of people have forecast that he may go next year. I don't know about that, but this chart is not looking great. We notice, for example, that Draconic Ceres is on his ascendant, that takes in all this Leo in his 10th house. I mean, notice how he's got Lilith right next to Pluto. That's quite a violent and ruthless indicator. Opposed by Neptune. So we have, in general, a clash between what is going on in his head and the reality of a situation. But interestingly, this long oppositional aspect is square Draconic Mars. I won't take in Uranus there, but that suggests to me tremendous contention. And the other thing, which seems to confirm what we know, is that his Draconic Pluto is on his Mars. It suggests to me that things are not going to get better for him, that this is quite a violent chart. I don't make forecasts about death or anything like that. I'm just saying that things are not going to get better for him. So overall, I think the year ahead is going to be incredibly exciting, or perhaps a little too interesting, as certain Chinese philosophers suggest. I think we're looking for very sudden developments in reaction to environmental concerns and other initiatives of sustainability. So there are good things, but I think it's going to be extremely challenging. And that's it.
Thank you so much, Agent 57.
Thank you, Alex.
Congratulations. Congratulations on completing your first mission.
Thank you. Thanks. Do I get a prize?
We'll see about that. Okay. Next up, we have Agent 32, Saul Jonassen, all the way in Norway, where I'm sure there's lots of snow and reindeer and all sorts of things going on up there. Welcome,
Everything.
Saul. Glad to have
Hi.
you. Always good to see your beautiful face.
Oh, it's been a while. It's lovely to be here. Lovely to hang out with the Europeans for a while.
Yeah.
Beautiful English. I was thinking, oh gosh, I have to tweak my English into more British, like issues. This is such a great dialect you have,
British.
Victor. It was a joy to listen to. Issues. We can't hear you now. You're muted.
Yeah, you're muted, Victor.
I'm being idiotic now. Hello, Sol. Lovely to see you.
Hi.
And Liz,
Yes,
too. I
sweet.
forgot, and Julian, wherever you are.
Now, where did Julian go? Now, that was a great, actually a very nice setting for what I'm about to bring. And I will also put my clock on so that I won't do what I normally do, which is run over time. I will definitely try to share my screen because I have a few charts. You know what really concerns me with all these things that are happening? I was running into a guy today in a store and he said, is there any astrological claim or like a proof as to why people are so crazy? You know, because he was thinking that, okay, people are going a little bit crazy and it feels a little bit crazy. Everything feels a little bit on the edge. And I've compared it to an initiation, and an initiation is always being put under quite a bit of stress and learning how to deal with the emotions, the physical reactions, and the mental, chatter that comes up in any situation that trigger our instinctual nature. And it is under pressure that you really see who are capable of leading and who are just simply not fit to do that. And evidently with Jupiter in Capricorn, we seem to have some sort of looming leadership problem on Earth today. And there are several distortions in our expressions that we are now having to deal with as we are trying to live together in this multitude of expressions that is humanity. You know, we have the polarization is starting to get on people's nerves. And in all of this, we have our own personal life. And right now there's these high electricity bills and, inflation. And there's a lot of stuff going on that really scares us, that really triggers that really instinctual part of our brains. So this is what I wanted to take a look at, how we can kind of navigate 2023 by looking at especially Venus, which is so prominent in the year to come. She's right now the ruler of the North Node, and next year, somewhere midway in 2023, she will be ruler of the South Node. And right now we also have Pluto coming in very strongly, being the ruler of the North Node, and then Mars will take take over from there. So it's a lot about how we relate to each other and how we relate to ourselves, but not just that. It's also about what we value in life, how we appreciate life, and how we manage to appreciate life even under stress and pressure. So yeah, I wanted to take a look a little bit on the cycle, the different movements that Venus will do in the coming year. And for that, let's see if I can find my little thing. I had a little bit of I'm screen sharing. Now let me see if I can find my program. Keynote, I'm sorry, it actually posts itself up. Now I recently did something with my computer and I'm not getting used to it. There we are. Haha, victory. Every time I win over technology, it's just like this feeling of being victorious. Can you all see this, right? Yeah, cool. All right, so there's a personal journey in this, and even, everything is shifting and changing on Earth right now, and it feels like so many things are coming up. It's almost like the Kraken is loose in one way or another, and there's an enormous amount of anger inside people. We've had it with so much. And this is the balance between being understanding and tolerant and kind and working towards harmony and peace, which would be a very Venusian expression of our existence. And then Mars-Pluto, which is more like, oh, give me a break. I've had it, enough is enough. So I had a chat with a friend of mine at the beginning of 2020, just when these 5 planets that opened up the whole COVID scene were about to get together. And he asked me what I thought about that. And I said, well, it looks a lot like World War III. And he said, well, what I see is that people are going to be very, very angry and they're going to behave like children. And I think he was quite right. We are under pressure. Our shadows are definitely being exposed. And it's causing a lot of distress on the emotional body, and it's hard to go through an initiation. So through Venus and her journey now, we can see how we can appreciate what we have and appreciate the things that we love in our life, and also go through an individuation process with ourselves when we understand that, okay, Chiron is in Aries, we have to trust ourselves. I'm trying to move this. I don't know, it's in the middle of, yeah, I can. Oh, I managed, yes. All right, so this is the ingress. This is the New Year's chart. And as you can see, let's see if I have a little pointer that I can use. Okay. Pointer. Jesus, my goodness. It's like, can't really find it. Oh my goodness. All right. Okay. But as you can see, Venus is conjunct Pluto for the chart of January the 1st. Mars is still retrograde, and during the period where Venus is the ruler of the North Node, there will be no Venus retrograde. But the fun fact with this is that she was retrograde as the ingress happened, and she will be retrograde as the new ingress will happen. So she's just creating a sense that, in between this powerful nodal transit of South Node in Scorpio and North Node in Taurus is kind of flanked by 2 Venus retrogrades. The first one was in Capricorn, and the last one, the one that we are looking forward to, is in Leo. And for me, this is, when Venus went retrograde in Capricorn, before there was this nodal ingress, it sort of gave me the feeling that, okay, it's time to mature up, take responsibility for what we can, and start behaving in a more mature way with each other. And I think, the experiment that is the internet is showing us little by little how we affect each other, how we can affect the situation to the betterment of everyone. We're starting to grow infinitely more conscious of ourselves than what we used to be. And I think the internet is a great birth aid in that sense. Pluto in Aquarius, Aquarius being a very self-conscious sign, will probably stir up another dimension of self-awareness, and that is so important. But it's also important to remember to not be too harsh with yourself. Consciousness without love is just a disaster. Then we get into judgment, and then we start judging each other and judging everyone else for every misfortune that we can possibly think of. Now, the South Node in Scorpio deals a lot with, well, it's sort of like the bag you drag. It's like, what's in your bag? It's like, oh, it's Scorpio in my bag. All right, so what's Scorpio? Well, Scorpio is basically a sign of healing if you look at it from a positive perspective, but what it feels like in our emotional body, and the nodal axis definitely shows the collective emotional body, it shows us that there's traumas here. You know, Pluto in Capricorn is also doing his ancestral thing. I'm digging in deep, you know, I'm going back to our grandfathers and digging up. You see how they've been tearing down statues and trying to erase imperialism from history, and all these things that have been going on the last couple of years has a lot to do with this ancestral healing that we collectively are going through. And now we have a lot of great ways to explain our emotions and our fears. And I think a lot of us are waking up to the realization that being on Earth is quite an intense experience, and how we are constantly being bombarded emotionally is taking a toll. So the North Node in Taurus is showing that, you know, if you want peace on this planet for the time being, with all these traumas coming up, you better find yourself a nice cozy place where you can hang up your hammock and just turn off the world for a change. You know, you don't have to engage all the time. That's what Taurus is saying. And through Venus, we get a little help doing that. We have to get a little help doing it because of all these traumas, we've grown into codependency with each other to a great extent. And there's a whole lot of people pleasing that's constantly challenges our authentic expression. So this is something that I'm having in the back of my mind when I'm looking at the transits of this particular nodal axis, and then the ruler. What is the ruler Venus doing? No, my little machine. Oh, I found it, the pen, but how do I get to the next? Holy macaroni. I should never update your Mac. Just don't. I think I have to. I can't really. It's totally stopped. How embarrassing. Oh, yes. Something happened. I'm sorry about this.
So there is in the panel at the top, there is undo. If you can find it, I'm not sure.
No, I can't see the pointer. That's the thing. I'm just it's just completely. But now at least I managed to switch the charts, and if we can live with this green thing, the graffiti, I'm fine. You know. So if we fast forward a little bit, you know, you will see Venus will make. First, she will make a conjunction to Saturn. I didn't bring in that chart. I didn't want to, overwhelm you with charts. But I'm tracking Venus as she's moving along this particular journey towards the North Node, and she will make a conjunction to Saturn, and then, you know, our friend Mars is finally going direct again as of 12th of January. So something is moving forward in our relationships, but she will also conjunct Neptune, as she will do here, and then she will conjunct Jupiter and Chiron in Aries. And I've been following. Right now, we have a waxing square between Venus and Chiron, and I think that sort of leads us to a treasure house of knowledge when it comes to our own healing and to our own the healing of our own authentic expression. There is little doubt that codependency strangles honesty in every relationship, and that eventually ruins relationships. There's a gap that grows between people. So until we have a way of owning our own experiences without necessarily projecting them onto others, but at least being honest with what's going on inside ourselves, I don't think we can make progress in relationships. And without, you know, personal relationship working, I mean, just see how politics and IDs and illusions and you know, how everything media is kind of pulling people apart and putting each other up against each other. I think, you know, once we opt for peace, and once we see that, you know, okay, this is good for not just me, but for everyone in my life, we are starting to grow into a more honest expression. And this is what Chiron in Aries is helping us to do, you know, an independent, honest expression. Yes, we are alone. It is what it is, that kind of realization. And that's the beginning of so much good. Instead of this entitlement or this kind of feeling that I sometimes get when I go online, I like this should have happened to my life and then it didn't, you know, this constant disappointment. And also the re-evaluation of what we find is worth our time and how we view ourselves in terms of social status and how much money we make and all that can easily destroy a person's self-worth. Now, as she moves closer to the North Node, you see Pluto is entering into Aquarius, and it will make a square to the nodal axis for a very, very, very long time during 2023. That's one of the major aspects of 2023. It's Pluto squaring the nodal axis, both from Aquarius to Scorpio, Taurus, but also later on when he returns back to Capricorn, he will square the nodal axis as the axis ingresses into Libra and Aries. So we are having this Pluto square the nodal axis for an incredible amount of time, and that goes for me to it shows that, you know, whatever happens out there in the collective is greatly affecting our nervous system and our way of being in this world. It's hard to enjoy life when there's so much trouble and pain, you know. It's like the cosmic drama is really loud these days, you know. It's like humanity is starting in a way to wake up, but you know, certainly initiations take time. That's what I've learned the last couple of years, is like you just think you got it and then it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So it's really showing us that we need to be patient, not just with ourselves, but with everyone we meet and the people we have in our lives. Now, patience is probably not the first thing you think of when you think of Jupiter in Aries. It's going to be a very impatient and as already mentioned, a very aggressive type of transit. So yeah, I don't know. This is a chart that had no whatsoever. This is again, we are in May now. We are looking at a Venus square Chiron, but there's also Mars doing his thing opposing Pluto, and I find that to be a very pivotal moment in this coming year. Somewhat, it's just after the last eclipses that season, so there's a feeling of something heavy in the air, and the challenge is to sort of find safety, you know, to be safe. Because it looks like it's going to be quite a unstable year. We have so much new stuff that is waiting for us. There will be so much change between 2023 and 2025. Yes, I will hurry up now, Alex. So there we go. And I just wanted to show the last chart maybe here. Yeah, because I think that's all we can manage. This is the ingress of the nodal axis into Aries and Libra. And this is where you see it's like we're going to be stuck with, Venus is just about to go retrograde, so we're going to be stuck with this re-evaluation process for quite a bit of time. And I think a lot of people will figure out their true worth in this journey over this year, and validate themselves on a much deeper level. So my hope is that we manage to sort out some of our interpersonal relationship troubles, and we find new ways of expressing ourselves. Venus will be retrograde in Leo, so she's in the most expressive, or at least the sign that has the need to be most expressive of them all. So we have a situation where I feel there's a lot of inner empowerment that can happen for a lot of people if they put in the work, of course. And if they stay self-conscious, but keep their heart open, it will be a journey that's filled with both victories and some setbacks. But as evolution goes, and especially 2023 will be 2 steps forward and 1 step back, thanks to that Pluto squaring the nodal axis. And I guess that's actually the most important thing to remember for me this year, is that, okay, be patient with yourself. You're getting there. We're all getting there, but it really takes a lot of time. It's dense gravity pulling us down, pulling us into the drama. So keep your inner balance, people, and yeah, have a nice one.
Thank you so much, Agent 32. I liked your graffiti. I thought it really added to the
You do.
chart.
I'm artistic, right?
But you know, all I see is moon on Algol, 25 degrees.
Oh, you are just moon on Algol obsessed right now, right?
I know.
It's going to be decapitated.
We're all losing our heads.
Okay. Yeah, we're all losing our heads. Yeah, it's not a bad. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Sorry for the technical problems, but other than that, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Good to see you. Next up, we have Agent 115, Liz Hathway, who was born in Wales but now lives in Netherlands, and I've heard her speak Dutch. Very impressive. Liz has got a great topic, and so I'm not going to delay too much and just let her jump in. Thank you, Liz.
Okay, I'm just going to unmute myself, and hopefully you can see in a minute my full screen. Yes?
All good, Liz.
Yeah,
that's great.
Okay. So I'm calling this year a year of transition, and also a year of holding back the tide. So what I've tried to do, I find it very difficult to, I mean, a year, consists of, a multitude of events and dates and astrological happenings. And sometimes, in a year like this, it's maybe best just to take a bird's eye view. So what I think we need to realize is that we are reaching the end of what I call the Capricorn epoch, which started in 1984 with the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in 0 degrees Capricorn. You'll notice at the moment there's a lot of 0 degrees, the Jupiter-Saturn mutation conjunction, 0 degrees Aquarius, 0 degrees Capricorn, the next Saturn, Neptune, 0 degrees Aries. So these are all sort of starting points. But as you can see throughout, from the period starting in 1984, there was one event after the other taking place in Capricorn. Saturn into Capricorn, Uranus in Capricorn, triple Saturn-Neptune conjunctions, which brought about, huge changes in Europe, the sort of Maastricht Treaty, we saw the fall of the wall, the fall of communism. So much has happened, culminating in the triple conjunction in Capricorn with Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto last year in the sort of final decan of Capricorn. And that seemed to almost catapult us in a way into this sort of new way of being online, shopping online, giving consults online. I mean, in the Netherlands, cash pretty much disappeared. There's so many places now where you can't pay with cash, which if there is a symbol of earth, then surely cash in your pocket, cash in your hand is what symbolizes it. So we're moving into this major shift, which is Reinhold Ebertin, he says, when Pluto changes sign, It marks out major shifts in the focus of power within society, and it will indicate the area of life which is likely to be subjected to major transformation. And Pluto as well is linked to that built-up power that lies under the surface, the id. And when it crosses over, as we saw when Pluto moved into Capricorn, we immediately had the banking crisis, you know, the opposite side, cancer, housing, you know, there was, and it's not left us actually since. So some major event I expect will happen as Pluto moves across into Aquarius, around quite close to the exact date. So we've got Pluto moving 5 times across 0 degrees Aquarius. So he's placing his stamp in a way on the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions in 0 degrees Aquarius. So it's a massive sort of like, you know, like a finger on the bell, and it's kind of persistently ringing. Pluto will station in that 0 degrees. So it spends about 3 months almost, you know, quite still in that specific point of the zodiac. Kind of events, they're life-shattering events, with not life-shattering, so but life-changing, direction-changing. There's just a few charts to kind of consider, you know. So we have, you know, Count Constantine accepting Christianity was Pluto in Aquarius, and this is well recorded by Eusebius of Caesarea. There's many historians who have given us the date for that. It was because of this famous battle that was taking place. We see the Copernican revolution, the Revolutionibus first being published, a revolutionary idea which changed our whole way of being in the world. And of course, the storming of the Bastille, Pluto out of bounds, and finally regicide with the murder of the king and his partner, Marie Antoinette. So what Pluto and Aquarius capable of doing is turning the tide of things, is, you know, upturning the table, creating something completely unexpected and completely new in a way. But it's a sort of, if you notice in all of these, through the charts I've shown you, Pluto is mid-sign. So this is when Pluto has established himself in Aquarius, but we're not there yet. We're going through this year of transition of Pluto actually changing sign from Capricorn to fixed air. So really important, I think, this year, in this major transition that we're in, is what I'm calling the Saturn-Neptune dance. Because Saturn and Neptune, Saturn is connected to individual fate and individual karma, whereas Neptune relates to the collective, to collective fate, collective karma. And they're meeting up here in Pisces. They don't actually conjunct in Pisces. Within a week of each other, they change sign into Aries, and they actually conjunct in Aries, but they hang out together for the best part, well, you can see, of, you know, until January 2026, they are hanging about in the same sign with each other. Now, I can't actually see, let's see if I can see the dates here. So there's quite a few dates on the side here, which you might be able to see. So Saturn ingresses Pisces on March the 7th. And that's when the year starts to kind of, you know, in my opinion anyway, it starts to happen. We've got on March the 20th, the Aries ingress. The next day, March the 21st, we have the new moon in 0 degrees 50 Aries. Again, these early degrees of cardinal sign. Days after that, Pluto moves into Aquarius. Days after that, big significant move. We've had 6 months of Mars in Gemini, where he pussyfoots around, you know, doesn't want to commit, and then it moves into this sign, Cancer, which is all about home ground, territory. So my feeling is around this time, we will probably see in Ukraine the spring offensive. We know that the winter in Russia and in that area of the world is extremely cold. Equipment doesn't work. You know, it freezes to such a level that it, you know, doesn't really sort of, you know, support large movements of troops. But I think when we get this move into Cancer, and then we're getting close to the Pluto station as well, that this is where we're going to start to see the year shaping up, something happening at that time combined as well. Because I think the whole point of Pluto's business is really aiming to destabilize. And in many ways, we can say that's having an effect with the whole energy crisis that we're going through. So Saturn-Neptune conjunctions, the earthbound illusion of separateness is replaced by a recognition of ultimate unity. That's a quote there by Liz Green from her book on Neptune, which is amazing. So there's a few dates here that we see the conjunctions that took place between Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. As I say, they don't quite make it in Pisces, but my goodness, they hang out together there. So Saturn and Neptune in Pisces, it's the language of water. It's the oceanic, it's the collective unconscious, it's the deep. It's ache and longing for meaningful change, the pain of separateness. And the kind of words, drowning, flooding, drifting, inundated, leaking pipes, overflowing, data leaks, dam breaches. You know, you can't swim, so float. You know, learning to deal with extremely complex and difficult situations, chaos, uncontrolled, psychic, gestation, the psychic cosmic womb, if you like. And as Victor said, I totally agree. There's a principle of opposites here, because Saturn's trying within this ocean of chaos to create and maintain order and to erect something. And Neptune is all about free floating, diluting, losing ourselves, dissolving boundaries, and returning to a certain sense of oneness. Topics are going to be healthcare, particularly mental health, loneliness, the suffering of the elderly, end of life care, fight for euthanasia, the nature of the ocean and destruction of marine habitat, strikes and disruption, particularly as Pluto starts to gear up for Aquarius, which is about collective movements, the ineffectiveness of governments to maintain control and to control the narrative, new youth movements. You know, last time, or in the 60s, when Saturn was in Pisces, we had the merry pranksters, you know, Ken Kesey's acid test, communal living. And Saturn, Neptune, you know, this, we want to return to Eden, to heaven and earth. Things hitherto unseen. Neptune is about boundaryless expanses, and so the ocean and deep space, but also here secret societies, behind the scenes plotting, the build up to this eruption when Jupiter Saturn conjunct in Aries further down the line. It relates, of course, to communism, Saturn, Neptune, and we see, for example, the fall of Russia, of course, under Saturn, the old USSR under Saturn, Neptune, but the Cultural Revolution started in China too, with Saturn, Neptune conjunct in Saturn in Pisces. Difficulty maintaining the narrative with Mercury, and this is the sign of Mercury's detriment. It's post-truth, so who controls the narrative? It's a really difficult sort of complex set of ingredients in this cake, you could say. So yeah, the build up here is towards some kind of big radical change in all respects, i.e. Saturn, Neptune in Aries, and around the same time, Pluto's final move into Aquarius. And it's difficult as well, because it does relate to communism, Saturn, Neptune, that's for sure. We know that the Communist Manifesto was published with Saturn in Pisces, Marx was Saturn in Pisces. But you know, you get countries like China at the moment that are struggling too. You know, the citizens are really under the eye there. But the most recent demonstrations in China show that even the most surveyed country in the world was unable to stem that natural eruption of frustration and anger, which is coming from the id, that Pluto energy. So there's a lot going on. This is the next conjunction in Aries, which is on the 20th of February 2026. So it's this step from primal chaos, which is Pisces. I find Pisces very much almost like, you know, the pregnancy, the whole period building up, and then we come into Aries and we have this great burst of primal energy. What was inward becomes outward. And it's really interesting. I find that Mars in this chart is at 22 degrees Aquarius, and it's exactly picking up close to exactly picking up the discovery position of Saturn and Neptune, which are conjunct, of course, in the Neptune discovery chart, which is shown here. So you can see Mars at the next Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, which is on the midheaven of the discovery chart, is picking up Saturn-Neptune there. So this is a great image here. This is an image taken from, well, the image is by Jeremy Deller, and it's called All That Is Solid Melts into Air. And of course, this is a famous quote from the Communist Manifesto. This was one of Marx's statements, which is a metaphor in a way for saying all that we take to be solid, even though we might not think it capable of a huge change, massive change, it does happen. And this is exactly such a period. We've just going through this huge revolution, actually, with computers and everything. And life is about, I think, to make a very big change. So yeah, we need to be, thinking blessed are the weird, the poets, the misfits, the writers, the mystics, all those Neptunian people, because we need to look at the same things in different ways. It's about seeing with different eyes, which is the whole point, of course, which was under the last Saturn in Pisces, Christo and Jean-Claude wrapped in the Reichstag. And the whole idea behind that was to see things in a different way. I'm ending with this slide. I've probably stormed through it at like 90 miles an hour, but I would like to wish you all a really great solstice and peace and love and happiness and health for 2023. Thank you.
Thank you so much, 115. Next up, we have a special guest, Julian Venables, who lives down south in Brighton. Julian, we welcome you to the Cosmic Intelligence Agency, and we are looking forward to hearing what you have to say about 2023. So welcome.
Hi, hello everybody, and thank you for the invite. It's really nice to be here. I think I better say I've got the flu at the moment, and so my head's a bit like wading through some kind of swamp of trying to get everything together, and a bit fluey. So, but I'm gonna push through and show you some stuff today. So, is my screen shared at the moment? Are you seeing the stuff that you need to see, or do I do a share screen and start it off? Is that how I do it? Can you see my slides there? Is that?
We can see your slides, yes.
You can?
Yep.
Okay, is that big enough to show?
You still have the slide ahead of you that shows as well, but I mean, we don't,
Yeah,
it's
okay,
not
hang
fussing
on.
you
I'll
too
have
much.
one more go. I'll have one more go. Oh no, hang on. No, it's just going to do it like that. Okay, well, I hope you don't mind that. So basically, I'm going to talk, because of course, there's always so many things to say in astrology. There are so many things going on. What I've tried to do this evening is, in my short talk with you, is to just isolate a little bit. So I'm just looking at the Jupiter and Saturn cycle, and we're going to follow it and see how it develops over 2023, and even have a little look ahead into 2024 and leading up to the square. So of course we all remember that the December 2020, it was 0 degrees Aquarius, and that set in motion 160 years of air element conjunctions between these two outer planets, which of course are known as the chronocraters. In traditional astrology, they were the outer limits, and so they defined everything in the world. In modern psychological astrology, we look at them as our career planets, or because they're beyond the personal. So I thought to look at these because there was a reason for this, and the reason was, well, first I'll just say in 2023, the three aspects that I really want to highlight with you is we've got the third semi-square between Jupiter and Saturn. That's going to be on the 21st of March. There's the only sextile, Jupiter sextile Saturn, that's on the 19th of June. And then there's the first of 3 Jupiter quintile Saturns on the 31st of August. So let's have a look. Yeah. So why I chose this was because in the beginning of September this year, it was the lead up to the first Jupiter-Saturn semi-square. And there was this amazing turn of events in England within 2 days. And it was that the Prime Minister changed and then Queen Elizabeth II died. And it was all kind of at once, you know? And I just was like, well, that's something really different going on there. And I thought it was, you know, it was kind of, everyone was like, wow, you know, because there was this kind of very Aquarian thing that the monarchy went from a female ruler to a male ruler, so Queen Elizabeth II to Charles III, and at the same moment, the political world shifted from a male prime minister to a female prime minister, Boris Johnson to Liz Truss. And I thought that was incredibly symbolic. You know, it was like, it was quite Aquarian, actually. And I thought, well, that's something, there's sort of a theme there, something to, and so I thought about that semi-square. At the time, most people thought it was the Saturn, well, I think maybe, you know, a lot of people saying, oh, the Saturn-Uranus square. Of course it was, you know, but there was something else. I thought it was this waxing Jupiter-Saturn 20-year cycle that was starting to begin to make a manifestation. And so I started looking at that, and that's led to this little talk now. So, so this Aquarius influence cycle, of course, is incredibly new. It's fresh, it's exciting, it's very different in all the themes of Aquarius. And I think it's time that humanity can expect a lot from this particular cycle, because it's going to bring Aquarian themes of equality and radical change. So I think what we're going to be looking at here is to explore the unconventional, to explore the experimental, and to become open-minded as to the direction we are collectively going in. And so that sort of is a general kind of idea. So let's look at some of the themes of Aquarian nature. So Jupiter-Saturn got 18 years to go before they meet in Libra, which will be in 2040, which continues the airy trigon, of course. But so right now we've got this Jupiter-Saturn theme. So think of things in terms of being friendly to all, personal, detached, unemotional, freedom-loving, unattached, humanitarian, liberal, political, identifying with humanity, being non-conformist, being rebellious, being group-oriented, promoting equality, being cooperative, being tolerant, truth-seeking, and attuning to universal laws, which of course actually is a big wave towards astrology. These themes that I want you to look at here, I feel are currently in the news in some form or other every single day. You can take any one of those keywords out and you'll see them. Not necessarily in a, you know, they're not necessarily, but they're like themes. So you can see the underlying changes that are going on that will lead to these developing. And because Jupiter and Saturn are waxing at the moment, so we're going from the conjunction through the early stages. We're going to, this in 2023, we'll have the sextile, 2024, we'll have the square. Then we're leading up to that opposition in 2030. So everything is growing and opening into these new possibilities of 160 years of air trigon. So these are the themes behind it all. So I'd like to sort of keep those in mind, you know. So I'm going to go back a little bit first. What I've done, so the chart you can see here, and this is what I've done for all these, is I've taken everything out of the chart, except for the aspect that Jupiter and Saturn are making, the date, and then I did the nearest major lunar aspect, because this is kind of what I would consider to be the news cycle. So the 9th of April 2022 was the major news that day, or not the major news, but some of the news that day. So this was when Jupiter and Saturn had made their first waxing semi-sextile of 30 degrees. Saturn's at 22:45, Jupiter going ahead at, you know, just a little bit, you know, it was a like one day, because I put in here the first quarter moon. Okay, so it was just a little, basically the aspect had perfected and it was just moving ahead of it. So once the aspect had perfected, then I looked at the lunar phase. And it turned out on the 9th of April, it was the first quarter moon. Buckingham Palace announced that the Queen pulled out of annual royal service and will instead be represented by the Prince of Wales. That was the 9th of April this year. And then on the then we had on the 7th, on the on the 20th of July 2022, we had the first Jupiter-Saturn semi-square. So as you can see, there's 45 degrees now between Jupiter and Saturn. And so there's the semi-square aspect. And this I put in the last quarter moon of the phase, because that was the next lunar phase. There was actually a full moon, then there was the last quarter moon. And I noted that, as interestingly enough, in the news cycle, Boris Johnson tendered his resignation speech on the 7th of July, which was about 2 weeks before this. So he actually did his resignation speech on the first quarter moon. That was when the moon was in Libra, but the aspect perfected on the 20th of July. And then we had this amazing turning point between the 10th and the 21st of September. Queen Elizabeth died on the 8th of September. Prime Minister flipped on the 7th of September. Boris Johnson to Liz Truss. They both went to meet the Queen, shook her hand, and the next day she died. And that was the 7th, and then the 8th of September. This was the second semi-square. So here we have 45 degrees again between Jupiter and Saturn, marked out by the semi-square there, and the full moon of the 10th of September was that event, basically leading up to the full moon. So the Prime Minister's flipping and Elizabeth, the Queen Elizabeth dying on that was the full moon on the 10th of September, at the time of the Jupiter-Saturn second Jupiter-Saturn semi-square, which leads us now to the third one. So now we're going into the territory of prediction, because I just did a quick review with you there of some of the news events that led me to thinking to follow this waxing cycle. Excuse me, to follow this waxing cycle. So we've now got the third semi-square coming up on the equinox. It's the 21st of March 2023. Jupiter will be in Aries, moving quite fast through Aries at this point. Saturn will have just entered Pisces. So this, again, is a massive turning point, because Saturn moving into Pisces, just as we've heard from Liz and we heard from Sol, these really interesting insights, and from Victor, what's happening with Saturn in Pisces? It's like the institutions, the structures are all, it's like the castles that are built on sand. You know, Pisces is like the ocean, Saturn is like the boundary wall or the structure, and the ocean rides up against the wall, and a whole wall falls down, or an undermining occurs, or there's a sense of the ground slightly slipping away from previous structures. If you take that in context to the fact that Jupiter, Saturn had met in Aquarius, then this is the time that the people really are starting to come through. And of course, as we know, Pluto goes into Aquarius the very next day, or the 2 days later. So this is a perfection of the third semi-square. Jupiter in Aries tends to indicate that there's going to be a lot of assertiveness, or a lot of wanting to have a new direct experience of life, or growth in a new opportunities and growth in a new direction, or a new start. Saturn is, and the semi-square, of course, puts pressure. It's a half a square. You know, you can't do one and then the other. You have to do one, you know, it's one or the other. So if Jupiter's being stronger here, which I think it probably is, because Jupiter's like a fire planet in a fire sign, so it has a triplicity strength there. Saturn is not as half as strong as it is in Pisces as Jupiter is in Aries. So I think maybe Jupiter will win through there. We've also got the new moon occurring on the 21st of March at 0 Aries, the Aries point. So if the people are going to do something, it's going to be in March. Okay, so predictions wise, this panel about 2023, I believe that this new moon is a really major turning point. And it's the third of the semi-squares. And there's so much going on just at this point. Just as spring starts, the season of spring in the Northern Hemisphere, so the people are going to rise up. And in England right now, we've got huge amounts of dissatisfaction politically, you know, the unions, the politics. You know, I actually think that this could be a general election. Just because it'll be, people will just be like, oh, we just had enough. You know, the weather's getting better. We can all get out into the march on the streets or something. You know, there's going to be something really big just around about here. Maybe in the weeks following. So, you know, as that sun goes through Aries, and then the sun, of course, will meet Jupiter. So we'd be looking at, say, between 21st of March and the first week of April. Then there's going to be something very, very, very big happening here. And Saturn is kind of not supported in the way that it used to be. Okay, so this then leads us to the septile. Okay, now the septile is a very rare aspect. You know, it's 1/7 of the chart. So you can see here Jupiter will be at 27 Aries, Saturn will be at 5 of Pisces. They're both moving direct, and it's on the 4th of May. Actually, beg your pardon, it's on the 5th of May. They perfect on the 5th of May, but the full moon right across the axis of Sun in Taurus and Moon in Scorpio is the day before, on the 4th of May. No, beg your pardon, I've got that wrong way around. Septile's on the 4th, perfect's on the 4th. The full moon is on the 5th of May. And then, of course, Buckingham Palace has already announced that the coronation of King Charles III will be on the 6th of May. So King Charles has chosen his coronation on a septile, which is a very rare aspect. And septiles actually are quite mysterious or even occultic or kind of slightly strange and sort of working behind the scenes. And they are, you know, they have a quality about them that is, I believe, is considered to be not manifest. So, so it's a very interesting time. That, you know, do the royals do astrology? I still really don't know. I just can't guess it, because if they do, they certainly don't show it. You know, so I believe this is kind of coincidence. But it's a very interesting aspect to see right there, and so we shall be very interested to see what's going on at that time. I'd like everybody just to keep that in mind. Don't forget the septile is happening. You know, it's going to be really interesting at that full moon. Okay, so you know, I think something's there that's a sort of you know, Prince Charles, beg your pardon, King Charles is a very interesting character. He is a Scorpio, you know, and he has always wanted change. So you know, he's a transformer, like all Scorpios are. They have that quality of transformation about them. Something really interesting might happen. Okay, so just let's see how that develops. With Aquarian themes, of course, right? Because it's the Jupiter Saturn. We're at 0 Aquarius. So everything I'm saying here is with those Aquarian themes behind it. So as the old institutions are to a certain extent crumbling and finding it difficult to hold up the old order, Jupiter's demanding new things, yeah, and it's done this time in the septile fashion, which is this behind the scene, you know, mystical, occultic even. So really interesting, okay? That's how I see this. Then we're going to move on to the, wait a minute, the one and only Jupiter-Saturn sextile that will occur. So this is a 60-degree aspect. It's, of course, familiar Ptolemaic aspect. We all know this one. Jupiter at 7 Taurus, Saturn at 7 Pisces. Saturn will be down retrograding. Jupiter has changed sign. It's firming up into Taurus. Taurus is, of course, materialism, consumerism. It's the money markets. It's financial preserve. It's holding on to things. And Saturn is saying, oh, but everything's getting looser and more fluid and flowing. And Jupiter's like, no, but, you know, what's the opportunity here to rebuild or reconstruct or that sort of thing? The sextile is when two planets are listening to each other, but they're going to be listening to each other with an underlying Aquarian theme. So it's, what are we going to rebuild here? Because the old order's falling apart. So there's a sense of building again, whilst looking at the old things falling apart. This is, again, really good grounds for total shift and change in political direction, in economic systems, and all sorts of things like that. The 19th of June, 2023 is the perfection of the aspect. That's exact. There is a new moon the day before. Okay. So, I mean, it would probably, that's why I put in here the 26th of June, because we won't see it probably happen in the news until the 26th, which will be when the sun is in Cancer after the summer solstice and the moon will be in Libra. That's when this will be, this will be talked about or be newsworthy. So I feel that there's a, cardinal signs. The sun goes into Cancer after the 21st of June, the moon in Libra. When the sun and the moon are making a first quarter square in cardinal signs, then that's talking point. It's like, okay, something new's happening here. Something's ongoing. Jupiter Saturn quintile. We now reach the quintile phase. This is the 31st of August. And we have Saturn still retrograding at 3 Pisces, Jupiter at 15 of Taurus. So this is continuing to establish. It's not retrograding yet. Saturn is getting closer to finishing its retrograde at this stage. And on the 31st of August, there's actually a full moon. So this is when the people are really experiencing this kind of fall apart, that the deconstruction of Saturn, a sort of sense of deconstruction with the moon in Pisces, maybe with Saturn, that sense of, oh, well, then that's the way it's got to be, like a sense of that feeling of maybe a little bit of letting go, or the oceanic qualities of not being able to define what it is or what's meant to happen. Virgo wants to be, again, it's very mutable. What I'm looking at here is a mutable full moon with Saturn immutable and Jupiter in Taurus saying, well, how can we build? What can we do? What can we structure? What is it? Sustainability? Yes, it is. Is it ecological? Yes, it is. Is it all these things that that we actually know we've been wanting to do for 40 odd years, haven't got around to doing? Well, yes, it is. So there's all these different ideas there of Jupiter and Taurus, and the quintile, of course, is that transcendence creativity. So it's a very creative aspect, and there's going to be 3 quintiles. First one starting 31st of August. So this is a creative beginning, the first of 3, at the state of change, mutability, variables, adaptables, change of mutable full moon with the Saturn, a change in structures, laws, what people can do. Yes, we all want to live in the countryside and have a patch of land. I don't know, maybe that's a bit too idealistic, but Jupiter in Taurus, you see, is that possible to happen? More land share or something like that. Jupiter Saturn quintile. Second one will be the 16th of October. This is now Saturn's finishing up its retrograde in Pisces. It's going to be a 0 Pisces, Jupiter at 12 Taurus. It is also retrograding. So this is further considerations on transcendent creativity at the second quintile of 3, and there was a new moon in Libra the day before the perfection. So this, so again, I would see this as being probably manifesting 7 days later or 6 days later. So this will probably the first quarter moon, which will be around about the end of Capricorn, end of Sun at the end of Libra, Moon at the end of Capricorn. That will be that first quarter moon. That we'll see the theme of the week or the theme of the news at the time, and how things, you know, will be related to this of the quintile. You know, what is it? How creative can we get? People will be appearing out of the woodwork saying, well, I think we should all be doing it like this, you know. And there'll be a lot of reference, I think, to the past, to old systems, and how things can be revived, maybe. That then brings me to that's the end of those the cycles in 2023. Just remember that Pluto is entering Aquarius in 2023, but doesn't actually reach the exact point of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, which is 0 degrees 29 minutes of Aquarius, until the 5th of February 2024. And from that point onwards, the Jupiter-Saturn cycle will be loaded with additional regenerative Plutonic energy of change. So this here is, of course, what happens then when Pluto reaches 29 minutes of 0 Aquarius, is the 5th of February, and it's joined by Mercury, which of course is ideas. So again, we have a very strong ideas influence at the moment that Pluto meets the original site of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. And I mean, I could carry on a bit more, but I think that's pretty interesting at that point. I'll probably talk for about 15 minutes. I might just do a couple more, actually. I could say, here's the Jupiter-Saturn quintile number 3. We're going into 2024. And we've got here again, another mutable. This is again another mutable. So it's Jupiter-Saturn quintile. It's the 3rd one. Both planets are moving direct. Jupiter has now gone into Gemini. This is too many ideas, because when Jupiter goes into Gemini, of course, it goes into its detriment. And that's almost like it's too much information to filter through. But there's a last quarter moon as they perfect, which I think is quite interesting. And then, you know, it's almost like there's too many things to work or to analyze. You know, it's the pace of change. I believe this to be a rapid pace of change, because it's mutable. It's last quarter. It's a sense of, oh my God, you know, where are we going? Then Jupiter's trining that the Pluto at that point, you know, so you know, an awful lot going on right there. You know, when that happens, we're going into 2024, and then we have the first Jupiter-Saturn square on the 19th of August 2024. I do also want to say, by the way, that May 2024 is the current date of the next general election. It'll be early May 2024 will be the current date of the general election if the Tories can't be ousted before then. So there will be a general election in May, in the early part of May, which means, of course, that there will be a new moon in Taurus at the time of the general election, and Jupiter. You know, I mean, it's going to be probably a Labour landslide if they support proportional representation, which I'm really hoping they will, because I believe proportional representation to be one of the greatest things we can do right now with regards to Aquarian themes, because it means there's a lot more equality in voices in Parliament and in politics. So I think that's probably the thing that's I'm really hoping that's going to be the theme of a very important development for the next election. But just have a look at the mutability of this right here. You know, it's a quintile. And it's in mutable signs. Both Jupiter and Saturn are mutable, and it's the last quarter moon mutable, all around this at the end of May 2024. Leading to the first Jupiter-Saturn square in August, 19th of August, 2024, again, in mutable signs. Again, it's that pace of change, and it's a full moon, yeah, at that time as well, across Aquarius and Leo. So I think that's probably, there's another one. There's the second Jupiter-Saturn square, December the 24th, and this is going to be, again, mutable. Jupiter's now retrograding in Gemini. The flow of stuff is, possibly quite overwhelming, actually, as the old order still tries to hold it together and try to put in place what is it we can do, what's actually going to work, and things like that. So, again, this is this is the square. It's waxing. It's coming with Aquarian themes, and there's a sort of like a last quarter moon just building up there, or just happened a couple of days before. So that leads us then to, this is actually quite interesting, this one. This is the third Jupiter-Saturn square, which we're going to have between the 15th and 18th of June 2025. And now Jupiter goes into a sign it's exalted in. Saturn goes into Aries, where it goes into its fall, and they square each other. So here you have a cardinal. The energy of this, again, is immense, because the combination of those going from mutability to cardinal and then squaring each other is like, okay, we've made all these changes, and now we've got to kick off and start again. We've got to have how do we get this going? How do we make this movement work? And at the same time, there is a mutable, the people and the person of the moment, the sun, the person who's ever stood up there at that time, is going to be, saying, well, we're making all these changes, we're making these changes, we're going to start again, we're gonna have, it's a very, very interesting development. So everything with this idea of Aquarius, I always try to live in optimism, hope. I don't believe in conspiracy theories. I believe the world just needs more astrology, and there wouldn't be conspiracy theories if we had more astrology. But there we go. So I hope
thank you so much, Julian. Thank you very, very much, and it's been a joy having you with us today.
Thanks.
And
Thank you.
hopefully we can do some more work again in the future. And
Yeah,
so good luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Okay.
Well, can I just say one thing or not? I mean, I'm doing a new project.
Share my screen.
I have to share my screen, do I? Yeah.
No. I said I'm going to share my screen because we need to get moving.
Right. Can you hear me?
What were you going to say, Julian? Yeah, I can still hear you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. I've for Jupiter and Pisces, I've started a project of making talismans, and I have just made in tin, the metal tin, Jupiter's metal. I've just made some Jupiter talismans. This is Zeus Samon, who is the Greco-Egyptian god of the 5th century BC. So this is Jupiter as worshipped in 500 BC, and it's cast at this most amazing moment. So I have here all the sigils for Jupiter and the Jupiter Magic Square, and I cast that at an incredible moment. Jupiter day, Jupiter hour. Jupiter had a waxing moon applying to it, and it was culminating on the midheaven on December the 1st. Thank you, Jules. Thursday, December 1st. And if anybody
well done. Thank you very much, Jules. We need to move along. Thank you very much. Thank you. I knew, being with such a group of brilliant astrologers, that somebody had to provide some entertainment that was going to be maybe a little more lighthearted, because all 4 presentations were very engaging and very interesting. But I just wanted to take up the Saturn and Pisces theme of films that are coming up. And because I've done a lot of work on biopics, I just want to look at a few things that are coming up this year in 2023. And so just want to go back a little bit to show you how I've been working. So I've recently written a book called Mirror, Mirror, The Astrology of Famous People and the Actors Who Portrayed Them. So I'm just using my favorite film, which is Rocket Man, with Elton John, being portrayed by Taron Egerton. And just excuse me for a second. There we go. Move some stuff around. And what I found was that there are great connections between the real life person, the actor who portrayed them, and the transits that were going on when the film was released. So this, just starting off with an example, this is the charts of Rocketman. Now, we're not too sure of Elton John's time of birth, so you have to be a little bit careful at times. But just to show you a little bit what I've been looking at. So Rocketman was about Elton John's journey into rehab. And so what Taron Egerton was picking up on, I believe, was the Chiron conjunct Elton John's sun. And so Rocketman starts off with Elton John in a stage costume. He's dressed as a demon with wings and horns and everything, and he's pushing through the door to rehab. And as he's going through the process of telling his life story, bits of the costume come off. So the horns come off, the wings come off. Eventually he appears as Elton John, just the natural Elton John. And Elton John has Saturn in Leo, which I think is quite good at disguising the true self. And Elton John said in the film, you know, in order to become the person I want to be, I have to destroy the person that I am. And so that was very much the process of Rocketman. And then we can look at some other things that are going on in the chart. There's the Mars of the evening, very close to Elton John's Chiron. Elton John was very impressed with this film, although it must have pressed his buttons and caused him a bit of anguish to feel that, you know, his personal pain is being seen by millions of people. But it did give him that wonderful opportunity to tell his story and to let us see the real Elton John beyond the persona that he has on stage. So that's just roughly how it works. And so if I move ahead, this year, Madonna is going to have her biopic released, and she's going to be portrayed by Julia Garner. And we know Julia from the oh, sorry, this slipped my mind. The Anna film, Getting to Know Anna or something, Netflix series. A very interesting story of a person who has basically lied to all her friends and gotten loads of money for being fraudulent. So I think this is going to be very interesting. I don't know when it's going to be released. I couldn't find it, but let's have a look at what Julia is tapping into with Madonna. And almost immediately, you can see with the conjunctions, Venus in Aquarius conjunct Madonna's Chiron in Aquarius. And, you know, Madonna, like her or hate her, you know, she is somebody who's really gotten on stage and stayed there, true Leo, true to the former Leo. But, you know, we're going to probably look at some of her relationships. You know, she's had a lot of difficulties with relationships. I mean, imagine being married to two tough guys, you know, Guy Ritchie and Sean Penn. You know, those couldn't have been easy relationships to manage and to be a part of. And I also thought it was quite interesting. Now, I got the time chart of Julia, and her moon is very nicely picking up Madonna's North Node and Jupiter. And what I found in my research is that the nodes are very, very important in the synastry between the actor and the real life person, as well as Chiron, as we see in these two case studies. So we're going to hear Madonna's great story coming out. We're going to learn a bit more about the things that are going on behind the scenes, like we did with Elton John. And I'm very much looking forward to seeing this biopic. And then Paul Lynde was a famous comedian. He was known for being the center square in Hollywood squares. And he was a closet homosexual because, as we all know, that Hollywood wasn't kind to homosexuals. So he was very closeted and never had a chance to tell his story. But Billy Eichner is going to take his role, and we're going to see how Paul Lynde managed in this world of Hollywood and how he managed. And even though it's in conjunct, we can see that the Jupiter in Leo, that's the actor's Jupiter in Leo, is very close to Paul Lynde's moon. Now we got a noon chart for Paul Lynde, so it might not be exactly accurate, but I would say, Paul Lynde was somebody who was, he was very sarcastic and very, very snide in the way that he came across to people with his interviews and with other things that he was doing. And we also see, because we're probably going to see a bit about his personal private life, Billy Eichner's North Node, very close to Paul's Uranus Mars conjunction in Pisces. So this should be a really entertaining film. It should be very revealing about how Hollywood is treated its stars, and about how people manage to hide their true identities away from their audiences. Again, very similar to what Elton John and Madonna have done. We only see their personas. We don't really get to know the real person. So biopics, to me, are always very welcome to help us to understand the real person. And of course, astrology can help us even understand more about what the real person has gone through, and the actor's connections will bring out certain aspects of that person's life. And the next one is Whitney Houston. So I can't wait for this to come out. It's not a 2023. It's coming out in a couple of weeks. It's coming out on the 23rd. Naomi Aki is from Walthamstow, which is my neighborhood here in London. So I don't know if I've ever taught her, or she's my neighbor or whatever, but I'm really excited to see what Naomi brings to Whitney Houston. She is already getting really great reviews for the film, pre-reviews from the film. So, but let's look at this. Okay, so here's Whitney Houston's Pluto in Scorpio, and we have Naomi's Venus exactly conjunct that Pluto. So, we're going to hear all about, I think, the relationships that Whitney had, her troublesome marriage to Bobby Brown. We're going to see some really interesting things. And we have Naomi's Mars very close to Whitney Houston's North Node as well. So I'm thinking that this is going to be a film that's really going to engage a lot of people and really help people to understand the Whitney Houston that we never saw on stage. We're going to understand the real Whitney Houston. And there's, of course, there's other things going on here too. Naomi's Neptune on Whitney's South Node. So, I think it's going to be an incredibly wonderful film, a little bit tense, a little bit maybe hard to watch in places, but I got my ticket booked to see this film just before Christmas. It's going to be released. But the big movie was Elvis this year. And why I'm so excited about Elvis is because I'm thinking it might be an Oscar, either for Best Picture or for Austin Butler, who played Elvis. So I'm really excited about this, because I'm going to stick my neck out a little bit here and show you what's going on and what I think is going to happen for this great movie. Pluto, Austin Butler's Pluto is on Elvis's Jupiter. Also, interestingly enough, it's Elvis's third Saturn return. Now, when I was a kid, my parents were Elvis fans. And because of the age I was, I only knew Elvis through his fat jumpsuit era. I never knew him as the young, beautiful man that he was. And it's only through watching Elvis and that I really got understood. Elvis was kind of hot when he was a young man, and he was a great singer and a great entertainer. And by the time I got to have interest in him, he was past his prime. So Elvis changed this for me, and suddenly I kind of got into, why he was so magnetic, and how he was able to draw audiences in. So the film was released down here in Hollywood. I said it for Hollywood, and we could see that the sun was crossing over Elvis's Chiron, and so to me this means that the sun allowed us to see Elvis's hidden pain as he started to take more and more drugs, as he was swindled by his own manager, who just kept taking and taking and taking from him. So we got this illumination of the difficulties that Elvis went through. And also we have the Pluto transits to Elvis's Venus, and the North Node is implicated in there too. So, really fantastic film, lots of great energy taken with these two men and the transits that were helping them to tell the story. So the Oscars are on the 12th of March in 2023. So I was thinking, wow, okay, can we have a little look at, does Elvis have a chance of, having his, the second shot at glory? So Saturn, of course, would not have moved on too much further, but it's coming into conjunction with his moon in Pisces. So I think this is going to be a very interesting Oscar ceremony. I'm very, very excited. But all I can see all evening is the moon opposite Algol. They don't call me Algol Alex for nothing. So moon at 25 degrees Scorpio is opposite to Algol. And I found that this degree is quite important in the British royal family. So I think all the presenters had charts with the moon opposite Algol and the moon on Algol. And Prince Charles will have his coronation when the moon is on Algol. If we take it that he'll be crowned around the same time that his mother was when she was crowned. So, what's going to happen? So if you watch any of my other lectures, you know that, I'm very much into looking at Algol for the royal family and how it links in. So I think for movies this year, it's going to be a very exciting time. I think there's going to be lots of really interesting people that will be telling their life stories. And so I think for Saturn and Pisces, it'll be a great year for films. Oh, and here's Austin Butler. Will he get the Best Actor Oscar? Well, we're not too sure. I find it difficult to predict these things because it depends on how he does at the Golden Globes in a couple months' time, or sorry, a few weeks' time. So, he's got all these things going on. The moon will be right on his descendant on that night. We don't know the order of who's going to be presenting what and the order of categories that are going to be happening. But the moon for the start of the Oscars will be right on his descendant. So fingers crossed for Austin. I was disappointed that Elton John and Taron Egerton didn't bring home an Oscar. I feel that Taron Egerton was far better than Rami Malek in Bohemian Rhapsody. But that's just my opinion. So fingers crossed for Austin and the Elvis film. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up my section and open up to the panel to discuss anything that we might have glossed over or might want to spend some more time talking about. Just to remind you, you can download your free copy of Time Lords. Julie and I put a lot of work into this. Liz is a regular columnist with the mundane work. I do a regular column on movies. Victor has been a guest writer in several issues. We do interviews. We do all sorts of very interesting things. We managed to get our work on astro.com as well. So we have Julia and Peter's cooking column that appears regularly, as well as one of our articles. So Time Lords has really, really come on to being something that's making quite a splash in the astrological world. Okay, panelists. Okay. Can we, does anybody want to say anything about 2023? Can we wrap it up and bring it all together? Otherwise, we're going to say we wish you a Merry Christmas.
Well, there was something Victor said that made me jot down a few things, because I really appreciated some of the thoughts that came through there. And it was about the things that I've been thinking of, which is perhaps a little bit more on the positive side with this whole Pluto in Aquarius seeding, which is the year that we're going into. It's seeding now. And I think it was you, Alex, who actually showed not so long ago, there was this article about fusion being achieved, this energy, there's like a revolution going on in the energy world. And I think, when they find clean nuclear power, I think, a lot of these issues that we've had with carbon and all these things, which is sort of looming in our unconscious for the time being, in the great collective unconscious, everybody's tired and scared, and this energy problem that Earth has, like I prefer to look at it from a positive point of view, but of course there will always be profiteers even from clean free energy. But at least, you know, there seems to be making headway into to creating you know, the technology advances that we will see in the coming 20 years, as when Pluto will be in Aquarius, we'll have a lot to do, not just with AI and robotics and the things that we might fear, but also in a positive sense, you know, bringing clean energy to people. That would be awesome.
I totally disagree, though, with regard to nuclear energy, because I think the opposite sign to Aquarius is Leo. So I think solar energy, clean energy. The problem with nuclear energy is the waste. Where do we store it? We're saddling future generations with it. And it will always be, you know, if there is any kind of terrorist threats, we've seen it now with the possible bombing of the nuclear plants in and around the Ukraine. These sites are potentially as well targets for idiots and things. I think we should be going, if we really want to bring a proper change, we should be going down the route of clean energy that comes from natural resources, not, you know, sort of going deeper into the situation of nuclear, where we have no clear idea really what we're going to do with any waste, you know. So yeah,
but you know, the fusion energy is different. It does not create runaway reactions. This is it's a revolution that's happening right now in the world of science. So I'm pro. And it doesn't really give off there's no waste with fusion. So there's like a whole new world growing in the, you know, opening up right now that is quite exciting, you know. And it also,
if we could be clean and without waste.
It is clean. It is clean. Yeah. It's clean, and it's also it's you know, like the technology is much safer than nuclear fission, which is what you were talking about, because fusion can't create runaway reactions, so they won't be, you know, they won't be a terrorist goal, because there's nothing that can really happen there, which is a good thing, you know, and it can produce so much more. I also vote for the solar energy, but you see the wind power that they've been trying to introduce is very inefficient. It's very bad for nature, bird life, for instance, you know. So we've had massive protests in Norway in particular. Yeah, you have tidal, you have lots of different ways of creating clean energy, and I, you know, so that will be the upside of Pluto in Aquarius. We hear quite a bit of negative things going on with surveillance, and you know how we're all being, you know.
Yeah, no, there is a positive side, because I think you touched on that as well. The Leo as the opposing side to Aquarius, you know, the sense of self, you know what I mean? Trusting yourself, following your, not being like the pack or following the herd, but the light within, you know, your own sort of letting your own light guide you, and being your own source, you know what I mean? As opposed to taking on fake news. Check it with yourself first, you know, be your own person. I think the Leo axis can be quite interesting. It can really kind of
absolutely,
you know, the power of the individual as an individual, not as a member of a group. But yeah,
and that really sets, you know, that really also, you know, I've been thinking a lot about Burning Man, because I like festivals and I like the idea of Burning Man, which is a co-creative event. And leave no trace is one of the big rules in Burning Man, you know. And this co-creation, for me, it really portrays the Aquarius Leo axis, where everybody comes in with their participation, with their gift, showing their gift. And if you look in the underground, especially among the millennials, you see a massive amount of creativity being spewed onto the internet. People are cooking and building and sewing and knitting, and they're doing all kinds of great things. I even made my first shepherd pie thanks to some reels I saw the other day, you know, which is like so cool. It brought new life into my kitchen. And I think, you know, these are the happy news that we are missing out of. There's so much creativity in people, and I can't wait to sort of, you know, have us express that even more. And I think it's coming more and more. Yeah,
I think if I can just, I mean, I'm not against anybody on this one, But Sol, I really embrace what you're saying because of that Draco-Uranus on all that Aries energy as we go Pluto into Aquarius. Uranus, of course, by its nature is unpredictable and dangerous. Like all the planets, like everything else, there is a spectrum of meaning from the negative to the positive. But the Uranian energy on Aries actually takes us into all sorts of extraordinary new directions. You talked about nuclear fission. Is that how I call it? Fission?
Fusion. It's fusion.
And I take that as one example, but I also think it embraces all the scientific innovations in sustainability, solar, wind, space, utilizing the sun from space. I think we're going to go into a whole new direction with break templates. So I think that what Liz says is absolutely right. We've got to watch it. There's a struggle, there's a fight. That's clearly in the draconic energy.
Absolutely.
There's always going to be the people, I'm afraid many of those people are in government at the moment who cling to the carbon nightmare. But I kind of agree with you both, but I'm going to the positive on that bit.
Well, I come from an oil-rich country. I don't see how our economy can live without oil.
No,
I'd just like to add something very quickly about the nuclear thing. Is a couple of fixed stars that have a history of nuclear and things happening with nuclear is Aldebaran, which is currently at 10 degrees Taurus. I beg your pardon, 10 degrees Gemini. That's the eye of the bull. That's one of the Persian royal fixed stars, Aldebaran. It's at 10 Gemini, and Antares, which is at 10 Sagittarius. And this news announcement that we're getting at the moment about scientists saying we found something new with nuclear is as Mars is retrograding over those fixed stars. Yeah, so it's a retrograding conjunct Aldebaran and opposing Antares, and then it will station at, I think, at 8 degrees, and then comes forward again. So the theme of nuclear things at the moment is very up, right, in with regards to how those fixed stars work, because you can, I mean, I'd have to get my books out to do this, but Diana Rosenberg, I don't know who this one, she goes into it quite a lot. These books here, I don't know if you've seen these before. Remember, anybody seen those?
Secrets of the Ancient Skies.
Diana Rosenberg. She was a New York astrologer, and she's every single fixed star in great detail. I mean, but it's not very well edited. The editing in this is unreal. But you can wade through them, you know. Anyway, she discovered all the nuclear stuff to do with and Aldebaran and Antares. And so when you mentioned that, I suddenly thought that big headline in BBC News yesterday. Oh yeah, you know, like nuclear. Well, Mars is going over that point at the moment, and Mars, of course.
And then, you know, after 2025, we're going to have Uranus in Gemini as well, touching upon these very points.
Yeah.
So there's lots of stuff. There's another thing with Pluto in Aquarius that is also worth mentioning, Victor, that pertains to science, and it's what happens in the world of DNA, which is insane. They are, it's like I saw this program the other day. I'm like, okay, my mind just blew. Just crazy, and that shit needs to be regulated, that's for sure. So, you know, I'm hoping, you know, science, it's the Promethean challenge. Very Promethean challenge,
controlling the micro energies, and it follows through on artificial intelligence. It goes through to the heart of science itself and genetics, and there are dangers, huge dangers.
Yeah, I mean, when we were sort of introducing species, you know, to places that they didn't belong, I mean, you know, the Victorians were really good at that, like rabbits to Australia and things, you know, and then we find out later that, you know, we haven't got foresight. We always think afterwards, aha, you know, we should have done it differently. And I think we need to learn some lessons before we take steps into, you know, genetic engineering, completely changing the nature of things. that could backfire on us somewhere down the line. It's that, yeah.
Picking up Liz's point is, maybe I'm playing devil's advocate here, is of course, I'm never entirely persuaded that Aquarius is committed to democracy. And it's very interesting that the images running through the themes that Julian's identified, Liz and Sol, is that we're talking about things that we don't vote on. You don't hear Keir Starmer or any leader say, oh, shall we decide upon genetics? Shall we decide on what kind of energy source we're going to have? We don't actually vote on the key major themes that are drawn under the Uranian age.
That's true.
Yeah.
So I think we're going into, I'm going to be controversial. I'm going to be even more controversial than the young Julian over there. I think we're going into a quasi good-looking, meaningful fascism, where we have to go along with decisions made by specialists, scientists.
A technocracy.
Technocracy, that's the word they use for Pluto
and
and
there's
Aquarius.
the danger. I'm not saying it is going to be a technocracy, because there are competing energies going on here. But technocracy or techno-fascism, and we're seeing early signs of it in social media. Elon Musk,
definitely.
These little
I totally agree. I totally agree.
You know, Henry VIII, Elon Musk presiding over what is real, what is true in the old Twitter land.
Yeah. And don't forget, thinking about that 0 degrees Aquarius, so that's the midheaven of the inaugurations of the US presidents. So given what happened, you know, a few years ago with that sort of, you know, storming of the Capitol, it's going to be interesting to see as Pluto crosses over that 0 degrees midheaven of the inaugurations of the presidents as well. And China, early Aquarius rising. So there's a lot of things stirring. It's kind of
in the United States have both the moon and South Node in Aquarius, so they're
that
very
is
much
really,
into that. I mean, like
totally.
We can only, but it's like sometimes we forget that we're in the middle of history, and you know, having foresight is not always easy, because it feels to me like once I get into my philosophical mode, I tend to see life as like a huge experiment where we're constantly learning through our mistakes, and it seems like it's the only way, because we're that stupid, right? And our expanded consciousness is not. It's like we're just constantly trying to learn new stuff, and just imagine the energy, the speed. Was it you, Victor, who said that time is like moving quicker now? It feels like this earth, like everything is moving so quickly now. And just imagine the last 30 years since Saturn was in Aquarius last time, and we were introduced to the internet on a more collective scale. You know, the expansion of our consciousness since then. It's been completely insane, you know? No other generations alive on Earth have ever gone through such a massive expansion of consciousness as we have done, who are alive right now.
Aquarius connects us all together. That's wonderful in a way. It also exposes us to all the random thoughts that are there. And we see that in social media, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook. But it's an interesting thing which I didn't really pick up on, but it's a small point that I make, is that when Pluto went into Capricorn back in around, 2008, 7, 8?
Yeah.
Initiated the whole collapse of the bank, the threat of. And I'm wondering whether Pluto will turn its attention to social media, high-tech science, and bring down so much as it raises up.
Yes, that's a great point. It's a great
point. That's for sure, because I mean, like Evertine says, it's sort of what's ready for, you know, change will certainly, when Pluto comes into the arena, it will happen. It's going to happen. I mean, you know, like deep fakes and all of this kind of stuff, it's so potentially dangerous for democracy that you can put words in people's mouths.
I find it interesting, if I may just say a little political observation, that the author of fake news is Donald Trump. he created the fake news awareness, which is interesting. It was thanks, or accursedly, that he raised the question of fake news, even though he arguably is the perpetrator of fake news.
But what do they say, Victor? It's an ill wind that blows no good. I mean, you know, there can be good things.
This is the strange thing about life. I mean, even people that we don't agree with sometimes raise issues accidentally. And he's a forerunner of what's going to come big time. What is fake? What do we believe? What is real?
Yeah.
You know,
That's why the Leo is important, that checking with yourself, having a sense of self, you know, who you are, that you know, you're not going to get swayed by, you know, all of the sort of winds and falls.
Astrologers are aware of the competing energies. And,
you know, I have kids who are born with with Pluto in Sagittarius. Both my children are, and they're you know, I've just been zooming in on their future a little bit, and them growing up with this Pluto in Aquarius, and all these ideas, and you know, the convictions that this generation carries deep in their soul fabric. I mean, they're gonna fight a lot about what's true and what's not true. It's like, I'm right. No, I'm righter. You know, they're going to be so convinced of their own of truth in one way. And after that, you know, the Pluto in Capricorn generation will come, you know, into the scene and start creating something. So this is something, a useful experience, because, I mean, we just got to admit it, I'm growing older. Might not be so relevant in a decade or so, you know, but my kids will be, right? So I'm thinking of, you know, in that way, I'm thinking of the future, and it gives me a little bit of insight when I'm seeing what type of ideas they come home with from school, and what they've been learning, and how they relate to this modern world with internet and everything that goes on, and who they are. And some days it gives me a lot of hope, and other days I'm like, oh dear Lord, really? Like, it's spooky, because they're so sensitive to the ideas that is circulating. As we were.
I'm going to have to leave you, I'm afraid. I'm starting to get. I need to drink something. I need to get something warm down my throat. I've been coughing away here on the quiet. What a great conversation. I feel almost like I want to stay in it, but I think I'm going to bow out gracefully. Merry Christmas, everybody. Or do we have to sing, Alex?
Christmas.
Same to you.
So we have to sing. Are we singing now?
Should we
anyway,
sing
I'm bowing out, guys. See you in the new year.
Lovely to see you, Liz.
Good to see you, Liz. Take care.
See you, Liz.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, this is Sun Neptune square. People need to take care of their immune system for sure. Keep warm on your feet.
The other night, you know, it snowed here in London, right? It snowed here and then it froze over. The other night I slipped 4 times and I cracked my head and it ended up in the A&E.
Did me not?
Yeah. So how's that for Saturn in Pisces, you know?
Yeah, well. Well, it's the kind of climate we're used to, you know, rain, snow, freezing over, you know, like I think we have world record in wrists. Every year people are falling and then they want to
I know.
And the wrists are broken. Yeah. All righty. Well, maybe this was a nice time to say goodbye then.
Well, Merry Christmas.
Right.
See you guys later. Take care.